Shalom. Thanks for joining me. I'm in Matthew chapter 9. Matthew chapters 8 and 9 are grouping together of various miracles that Jesus performs, and Matthew is using those to demonstrate the authority of Jesus. And now we're in chapter 9, beginning at verse 14, where Jesus is questioned about fasting. Verse 14, then John's disciples came and asked him, how is it that we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast? Jesus answered, how can the guests of the bridegroom mourn while he's with them? The time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, and then they will fast. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch will pull away from the garment, making the tear worse. Neither do people pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst. The wine will run out, and the wine skins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved. I always thought this was interesting, talking about wine skins and cloth and patches, and then all that somehow or another connected to fasting, and somehow or another that's connected to this illustration of a wedding, where the bridegroom is at the wedding, and while the bridegroom is at the wedding, nobody is fasting. Fasting is associated with mourning. Fasting is associated with sadness. Fasting is associated with some sort of struggle, discipline, or something that we're working on. And John the Baptizer, his apostles, his disciples, his followers, came and approached Jesus and said, how come your disciples don't fast? We do, and so do the Pharisees, but how come your disciples aren't fasting? And then Jesus used this illustration. Well, when the bridegroom's at the wedding, people aren't sad. People aren't mourning. But then he says this, the time is coming when the bridegroom will be taken from you, and then you will fast. Now, Jesus is predicting there his death, his crucifixion, his resurrection, and he's also predicting his ascension back to the Father so that he will not be here present with us like he was at the time of the disciples. But he is going to send his Holy Spirit, he is telling them later. He does. He sends his Holy Spirit on the day of Pentecost. The Holy Spirit came down and filled us, indwells us now. So we are not alone. But it's interesting that fasting is associated with missing Jesus. Fasting is associated with a longing to be with him. And sometimes you do have to ask yourself the question, do you fast? If you fast, how often do you fast? What does fasting mean to you? What does it do for you? Now, all of this is associated with this other illustration about a tear on a piece of cloth. And when you patch it, you don't put a brand new piece of cloth on there. You find another old piece of cloth and sew that in there. Because otherwise the whole cloth gets ripped up and torn when the new fabric starts to shrink up and it creates a bigger tear. And he also talks about wine skins. And if you got new wine, you don't put it in the old wine skins. You put it in the new wine skins. And that way you get the long-term use of the wine. The old wine skins would burst and all the wine would run out. Jesus really isn't talking about sowing, and he isn't talking about wine. What he's talking about is the fact that he brings a new life to all things. And the old must go away, and the new must come. Old garments, old wineskins, they're there, they've served their purpose. But Jesus is teaching that his teaching and his becoming a follower of him means I have to let go of the old, and I have to embrace and put on the new. Colossians chapter 3 describes it as this, take off the old self and put on the new self. So following Jesus means that I am taking on a new lifestyle. It means that I'm not living my old way. I'm not being bound to the old ways. I'm now looking forward into new ways, new wine, new cloth. Yeah. Thanks for joining me.